Hello, welcome to SAT Double Take, where we solve SAT math problems in at least two different ways, and the best way to do it is whatever's best for you. So let's start on number 24 on the College Board Exam number 1 calculator section, calculator, okay. And let's jump right into it. Which of the following is an equation of a circle in the xy plane with center at 0, 4, and with a radius of n.4 thirds, comma 5? All right, so no matter which method we do, which will ultimately come down to understanding Pythagorean theorem or the distance formula, we have to understand that we are working with the equation of a circle, and we can tell that by looking at our answer choices here. These answer choices are in the form of the equation of a circle, where h is representing the x-coordinate for the center of the circle, which they tell us at 0, 4. It's 0. So that actually eliminates none of them at this point. But then y minus k, the k represents the y-coordinate of the center of the circle, which is 4. And what we see is that it's positive 4, but the equation is asking for you to do y minus whatever that value is. And since it's a positive 4, this ends up becoming y minus 4. So that automatically eliminates b and d. It would have been b or d if this was 0, negative 4, because y minus negative 4 is y plus 4. Okay, so now we understand that we're at least down to a or c. And I think drawing the circle will make better sense of why we either use triangle, Pythagorean theorem, or the distance formula. So plugging it into this makeshift coordinate plane here, 0, 4 would go 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. So this is 0, 4, and then 4 thirds and 5. And this is the calculator section, so you can actually go into your calculator, and 4 divided by 3 is going to give you 1.3 repeating. So essentially that dot's going to be somewhere right before the halfway mark between 1 and 2 at the y coordinate of 5. So I'm just going to say this is 1.4 comma 5. And this is now representing the radius of a really poorly drawn circle that I'm about to finish here. But that doesn't really matter. What matters is that we need to understand what the radius is, because if we look at our answer choices, we can see that everything is now the same between A and C except the last portion, the fraction there, which is representing whatever the radius's value is squared. So let's figure out what this radius is. There's two ways to go about it. This is where we can start diverging into our two methods, and I will hyperlink the second method at the bottom. So using the triangle theorem, our Pythagorean theorem, if I were to complete this triangle right here, I'll pick a different color. Let me pick a different color. Let me say like purple. Now I'm finishing this triangle. What I can see is that my upwards, or my change in y, is a value of 1, whereas my change in x is a change of 1.4. If I were to plug that into Pythagorean theorem down here, I would end up with 1 squared plus 1.4 squared equals our radius squared. In this place it's c, but we want to just now simplify it. 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 1.4 squared, if I put that in the calculator, I end up with 1.96. Now, what I do want to clarify here is, before going into this, I understand that it's hard to understand when you want to start estimating, kind of how I am doing here, and when do you want to be precise. Well, now looking at our two answer choices, the fact that we got it down to 2, I can see that the difference in what we have here is vastly different. So 5 over 3, if I were to put that in my calculator, I can see that this is 1.6 repeating. So this is essentially 1.7, whereas 25 divided by 9 is 2.7 repeating. So I'll actually just round that up to 2.8. This is such a drastic difference that having a few decimal points off it's not going to make or break our problem here. So moving forward, we can see that our radius is 2.96. This is our radius squared. But this is actually what we want, because we can, square root this and realize that the square root of this, and I'll put this in. You don't want to do this on test day if you don't have to, because it is a waste of time. But the square root of 2.96 is 1.72. That equals our radius not squared. But remember that these values here are asking for the radius squared. And I can see that this answer matches A right here. Now, I didn't have to necessarily calculate this. I can see that 3 only goes into 5 one time. And since my whole number here is 2, this would have to be my answer, or A would have to be my answer, because I know that 9 goes into 25 almost 3 times. Now, how does this look different in the distance formula? In the distance formula, we wouldn't worry about triangles. We wouldn't worry about how far up we go to the up or to the side. And we just plug in these coordinates, 0, 4, and 1.4 dash 5 or comma 5, into the distance formula here. The distance formula, which is actually now representing our radius. The distance is representing our radius, so I can rewrite it as r is our x coordinates. So let's do 0 minus 4 over 3. Or you know what? Let's put that back in our decimal form, right? So 1.4 squared plus what our y coordinates are, and that would be 4 minus 5. 4 minus 5. And that would be squared. All right, I got some crazy stray marks here, so I'm just going to fix this real quick because that looks terrible. All right, so since we're squaring it, we really don't have to worry about negatives. 0 minus 1.4 is negative 1.4, and if we square that, 1.4 squared, as we saw earlier, is 1.96. Plus 4 minus 5 is 1. Negative 1 squared is just positive 1. And we're kind of back where we started, almost. Your radius is going to equal this. So the radius is going to equal the square root of 2.96. Which means that, you know, your radius is going to equal 1.72, as we saw here, if you were to actually calculate that. And then, but you can also recognize that, you know, if you want to know what the radius squared is, you can just square both of these proponents here, and you end up with r squared equaling just 2.96. But you can also follow the logic of, well, my radius is 1.72. Let me just square both sides here, and then you end up with the same answer. And then you'll see that that matches A, our choice A, when we convert 25 to over 9. And it's the closest to that compared to C, which we know these are the only two options. So once again, the best method is whatever is making the most sense to you. Best of luck.